attempt. I think I'm the co-host. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do the recording, if that's okay. Um, Oten, I think I'll go ahead and do the recording on my cloud, and then I can upload it to YouTube after. That's okay with you. Okay. Okay. Okay, another minute or so, and then we'll get started. Oh, I see, Oten, you started the recording. Okay, we're good then. I don't have to worry about doing it. Okay, good deal. Okay. So on behalf of the Columbus Karma Tiksum Choling, I'd like to welcome all of you to the evening session for the 10-day meditation challenge. We're now in day 7. And so it's one of the things I wanted to do before we get started formally this evening is to find out how it's been going for you. Has it been easy to do meditation on a daily basis? Has having the 10-day challenge helped you in terms of being able to get on your cushion? I'm just kind of curious as to, since this is the first one, I'm really curious as to how people are responding to having a 10-day challenge. You can feel free to unmute and let me know how you're doing it, or if you can put it also down in the chat.
I recently saw a talk by Mingyur Rinpoche, and he said that in Tibetan Buddhism, they really like you to do commitments like for so many days. Mm-hmm. And after that, it starts to become a natural part of your day, like, as we always say, like brushing your teeth. And I think what I've learned from this challenge is how many little blocks of time I have all over the place. Like, I always think I should do this one great big production, so I never do it. So now I'm constantly just dropping down and sitting and meditating. And so I'm loving it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks for that. I appreciate it. I'm really interested in hearing what people have been, how it's been for them, if it's been easy, if it's been hard, what's been challenging, that kind of stuff. So thank you, Lama. Anybody else have anything they'd like to offer, how it's going for them?
Sure. I think it's been fun to have a group for 10 days. And then I can put it out there to social media and give them little tips of meditation. Here's my day 3. So that's been fun. I've got really good reception from that. And, you know, you do think if it's a big production to sit down every day, but really it's kind of fun, actually. So it's brought the fun back.
Yeah. It's brought the fun back. All right. That's wonderful. I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah, I think for many people, we have, as you say, at first, we think that meditation's a really big deal. And then after a while, it becomes more of a habit, and then it's just part of life after that. So that's good for you. Yeah. Anybody else have something to share? How it's going? Oh, here's one. It's causing me to pay more attention to the time that I spend sitting. I already had established morning and evening practice time, but I didn't really notice how much time I was sitting. Okay, yeah, good point. Good point. Yeah, and sometimes we don't think we're practicing very much, but when we start placing our attention on it, it becomes a little more obvious, right? And then I see Tom made a comment, with everything virtual, I am taking in all the ways to reconnect with the Sangha and seemingly more dedication to practice. Okay, yay. Yeah, this has been one of the unexpected, I think for me, it was unexpected benefits of being home more. Because some people now are working from home. I'm working from home, obviously, but lots of other people are too. And And Dharma centers and Dharma teachers have had to go virtual and begin using Zoom and other platforms in order to connect to the Dharma community and to explain meditation and to do meditation together. And I've been very surprised at the refreshment. I think that this is kind of what Ellen was referring to also, that when you do or make a commitment to do meditation every day, that it becomes then part of the natural course of things. So thanks for that. Anybody else have a response? I'm just curious how it's going.
I had already been meditating a little bit daily, so I decided to try and increase that for the marathon.
Okay.
And I guess I'm just surprised. It seems like there isn't an upper limit that I've hit yet. Like every little bit more that I meditate, it keeps sort of bleeding over into the rest of my life, making me increasingly aware.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just cool, I guess, to see how well it works.
Mm-hmm. I'm really appreciate your sharing about this, because I think that this is what, when I teach meditation to people and they're learning it for the first time, one of the first things they'll say to me after they've been meditating for a little while is what you just said, which is, wow, I didn't know I thought that much. Or, wow, I didn't know I was thinking about that particular topic so much. And I think that we end up surprising ourselves with how much time we actually spend thinking and rehashing and going through things. And that's one thing. And then the other thing I've noticed is that people say that it surprises them when they're able to let go of something while they're meditating. That just moment of being able to let go of something, it's like, it's surprising.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when you let go of things, they stay gone, So thanks for sharing that. Anybody else? Okay, well, I appreciate the folks for sharing their experiences with the 10-day challenge. And now that we've done it 7 days, I've also actually noticed that I'm meditating more. I'm doing more quiet sitting now. And part of it has been the support of having this group every evening. And that's been a really good thing for me. I haven't always been able to attend because I've had to do other programs, but it's been really good for me too. So I appreciate all of you being here. So it's nice. Well, then what I'd like to do now then is I'd like to start this evening's talk by reciting an English verse that summarizes the topic from yesterday and continues the topic that we're going to be discussing. We discussed yesterday, we're going to discuss today, we'll discuss again tomorrow, and then again on Sunday, which is the 4 immeasurable meditations. The idea behind the 4 immeasurables is that it's about turning our minds away from our negative habits and turning our mind toward positive habits. And I'll explain in a minute how that connects to the practice of meditation. Because when we first start meditating, it's all about following the technique and working with the technique and learning how to cope with the technique and learning how to return our attention when it wanders and how to deal with all of those feelings and thoughts that come up while we're meditating. And so at first, meditation is all about the technique, but then eventually it becomes about our thoughts, our habits, our patterns, and what we notice about our thoughts and our patterns and our habits. And then what changes we begin to be able to make in our thoughts and our patterns and our habits. So that's sort of the discussion point for this evening, is how we go from meditation to self-awareness, and then how we take self-awareness in a direction that's positive for us. So that's a little bit about what we'll be discussing. So I'm going to recite this in English. May all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they have that great happiness, which is freedom from suffering. May they dwell in great equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and those far. So having recited the four immeasurables, I'll now discuss a little bit about this evening's topic, and then we'll meditate a little bit. We started at the top of the hour with a discussion of how meditation allows us to see what's happening in our mind. It gives us a view of what's happening in our mind and what thoughts are going through our mind, and how those thoughts affect how we feel and how we think. And I guess you could say for many people, the start of meditation is the start of opening a Pandora's box, if you will, of our own motivations. I had a gentleman tell me after he had been meditating for a while, he said, I used to think I was a pretty compassionate guy. And then I started noticing my thoughts, both when I was meditating, and then it surprised me. I began to notice my thoughts when I wasn't meditating, when I was walking around in my everyday life. And he said, I found out how uncompassionate I am a lot of the time, and how many uncompassionate thoughts I think about myself, and how many uncompassionate thoughts I think about other people in my life. He said, I used to think I was a pretty compassionate guy, but meditation has opened my eyes to my own motivations, and I'm shocked. He was quite surprised. And I think that this is not always a bad thing. At first, it might seem like an unpleasant surprise to realize that we're not the person we thought we were when we started meditating. But on the other hand, wouldn't we rather know that our motivations are not always perfect? Wouldn't we rather know that our motivations were not always good? And so this is one of the possibilities that opens up for us through the practice of meditation. When we're watching our breath come in and come out, and then allowing our attention to rest on the breath as it comes in and goes out, sometimes, as you know, thoughts will come through and cross the screen of the mind, and sometimes we'll be able to let them go by. But sometimes they'll grab our attention. And for that moment, we're born in the world of that thought, whether it's something that happened yesterday, or something that's going to happen tomorrow, or something that's happening right this minute. And so as a result, we are consumed by that thought, and we are taken away by that thought from the present moment of our mind's awareness. We're taken into the future, into the past, or into the now. And when we are able to notice that our attention has wandered, and we're able to use the technique of touching and letting go of the thought, and then returning our attention to the breath. When we do that touch, let go, and return technique, what we notice is that often that thought will completely and utterly disappear, leaving an open space, a gap, if you will, between one thought and the next. And it's in that gap that we recognize that there is more to us than just our thinking, and that we actually can exist in that space between one thought and the next. And this is how we first are able to step outside of a thought and look at it from the outside and see what our motivation is in a situation, to see what our habitual responses are in situations. And learning about our motivations and responses is one way that we gain self-awareness, which to me, self-awareness is one of the great benefits of the practice of meditation, it's one of the side benefits of learning meditation, is to begin to be self-aware. We see the impact our thoughts have on us. We see the impact our thoughts have on our words and our actions. The teachings on meditation from the Tibetan tradition talk about how the mind is the monarch. The mind tells the speech and the body what to do. The speech and the body, they don't act alone. They act in concert with our thought processes. And so if we want to begin to get hold of our speech habits and our mental habits and our physical habits, then getting hold of the mind and seeing what the mind is very important. When my meditation teacher, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, started teaching me about meditation, he said, we start out as human beings who have a lot of bad habits. We start out as being a human being with a lot of bad habits. And then gradually through self-awareness, we begin to replace the bad habits consciously with good habits. And then eventually through the practice of meditation, we go beyond habit altogether and understand what the mind is in an ultimate sense. Now, right now, as beginning meditators, we're still at the part where we're discovering our bad habits and trying to replace them consciously with better habits. And that is the work that we do when we are both on the cushion and off the cushion. On the cushion, when we notice that we're having negative thoughts, we let them go and return our attention to the breath for a fresh start. When we notice that we're having positive thoughts, we also let those go and then return our attention to the breath for a fresh start. In this way, at first, when we're learning to meditate, we let go both of the negative thoughts that we see and the positive thoughts that we see. We let go of all of them so that we can get used to the technique of letting go. And getting used to the technique of letting go will help us down the line. How is this possible? Because sometimes when we're not meditating, we will actually notice the thought. And sometimes when we're not meditating and we notice that thought, we might actually be able to let it go. And that, for many people, is an empowering moment, letting that thought go. Somebody told me when they first started meditating, things used to bother them. Lots of things used to bother them. But then gradually over time, fewer things bothered them. In other words, things that used to bother them stopped bothering them in exactly the same way. And the reason for this is because they learned how to let go of thoughts when they were meditating. And then they gradually were able to let go meditating. So what you'll see a lot of meditators do is when they're not meditating and they're walking around in everyday life, what they'll start to do is that when a difficult situation presents itself, at first they will be completely lost in that difficult situation. Very much the same way that they're lost in a thought that comes to them while they're meditating, that thought will grab them or they'll grab it and they will be distracted from their meditation. They will also be distracted and consumed by these thoughts when they're not meditating. At first, it will be like that. But eventually, one or two thoughts will be so mild and so delicate that when they are regarded, when we turn our attention to them, they disappear. And when that disappearance happens, then we begin to get an idea of what might be possible for us. And then the next time that little thought comes to us, we might instead breathe. Just be with our breath. Instead of being with the thought, being with the breath, just as we would if we were meditating. And so in that way, self-awareness gradually dawns for us. At first, as I mentioned earlier, the thoughts that we notice are somewhat distressing. But just as we can learn to let go of thoughts in meditation, we can learn to let go of them in everyday life. So that's what I wanted to start with today. So I think we'll sit for a few minutes, and then I'll discuss and then we'll have a few questions. And if people have questions about meditation technique, we'll talk about that next. And then we'll talk a little bit about the topic of loving kindness. Just to summarize the instruction, because I think everybody here has been at one of the sessions where we have meditated together. So we begin with the physical posture, placing our body in the posture of meditation, having our legs either crossed in front of us as we're sitting on the floor, or having the feet placed flat on the floor when we're sitting in a chair, with the legs and feet about a hip width apart. The hands can be placed palm downward on the legs, either flat on the legs, or I saw that Lama Adam also taught the posture known as the paw of the lion, or the lion's paws, where the thumb is touched at the base of the ring finger and then closed in a light fist and placed palm downward on the legs. You can use either one, whichever one is better for you. And then the shoulders can be straightened. The back has its nice curves in it. The chin can be tucked in slightly. And the eyes can either be closed lightly or cast downward a few feet ahead, just gazing generally and not pinpointing your gaze at anything in particular, just gazing generally in front of you. The tongue can be touched to the upper palate behind the front teeth and then flattened, which allows the muscles of the face to relax. So there we have it. The legs, the seat, the back, the shoulders, hands and arms, the chin, the gaze, and the tip of the tongue. Placing the body in the posture of meditation, one then forms the mental motivation for practice, thinking, for the benefit of myself and others, I'm going to sit for the next few minutes, and use the breath awareness technique, following the breath in, following the breath out. And when thoughts arise, letting them go. And if a thought distracts, you touch it lightly with your attention, let it go, and return the attention to the breath for a fresh start. So we'll just sit for just a few minutes, and I'll ring the gong at the beginning and the end. Okay, that's a short session of meditation. Before I go on to say anything more about meditation, I'm wondering if anybody has questions either about the technique or about one's experience meditating or anything else. The meditation doctor is in.
Hi, Lama Kathy.
Mhm.
I have a question about rest. Maybe it's like resting in awareness, or so I focus on the breath,
Mhm.
and I try to do that like 10 to count breaths 10 to 20 times. But then there's
Mhm.
times where I'm just resting and kind of my awareness of everything,
Mhm.
if that makes sense. And I don't know if I'm doing it right or not, but it's just, it's not necessarily non-referential. Like it's just resting and absorbing everything within my experience, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Mhm. Let me see if I understand. I think I understand what you're saying because there is the experience of placing your attention on the breath and being with that. And then there's the experience of placing your attention just on your awareness of the visual objects in your line of vision. Is it more like that? Or is it more like something else?
It it can be that, but it's also the space and the sounds around me, and
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily focusing on any one in particular.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still focusing,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm still breathing in and out. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a complete sense of calm,
Mm-hmm.
and not really, oh, there goes a car and I'm following it along. I know that it's there, but I'm not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
attaching to it, or
Mm-hmm.
if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it sounds to me like it reminds me of the instruction that Tilopa, the Indian meditation master, gave when he said, "Don't prolong the past, don't invite the future," meaning don't think about the past and don't think about the future, and don't analyze the present, meaning that you don't analyze what your experience is with an intellectual description. Then so he said if you're and he said don't figure anything out and don't try to make something happen. So that's a lot of stuff to not do. Don't prolong the past, don't invite the future, don't analyze the present, don't try to figure something out, don't try to make something happen. So what's left is, he says, is to rest in the present moment of mind's awareness. And to allow one, because there's all of these things in your field of vision and hearing and so on, but if there's no story with them and there's just an awareness of them, that is in itself a form of meditation. But for some people, it is too subtle of an object, and so then they become a little distracted from that. I mean, and there's a couple ways it can go wrong. One of which is that you then start making comments about everything, and you don't recognize that you're making comments about everything, and then you have to notice and then bring back. And then I would say at that point you'd come back to the breath again.
And that's what I have been doing over the course of the past few days, like getting more and more practice time in. It is, well, at a certain
Mhm.
point I just rest.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
then if there was a noise that just becomes so, or
Mhm.
something just catches me, then it
Mhm.
is okay, back to breathing. It's
Mhm.
not like
Yeah.
kind of like slapping
Mhm.
my wrist, but it's just
Mhm.
like
Right.
come back to and
Mhm.
count breaths again.
Mhm. I think that the gentle touch is very important. And so what you've just said, where you don't give yourself any kind of a hard time, because again, there's no need to, because this is just about you and your experience of the moment. And the present moment of awareness is not about a moment in time. It's not about a moment in time. It's about your mind as it is right now. I think that's fine. I think that's fine, but you have to remember to stay attentive. And I think that's the main thing, because when we look at the Tibetan word for this form of tranquility meditation, they call it Shi Nay, Shinay. Shi means like calm or peaceful, and Nay, Nay, is like abiding. So abiding in this tranquility, or abiding like that. And at first it's impossible to imagine that it could ever be done. But then there will be moments when it arises. Don't get too, it's one of those things, I think you're doing it the right way, because you shouldn't get too excited about it. Like, oh boy, it's easy, blah, blah, it's like, you can't form any thoughts about it. It's just, you just allow your mind to be what it is, and you are with it. Mingyur Rinpoche, who's teaching, does a lot of meditation teaching online, he talks about this as being a form of open awareness meditation. So there's this open awareness of where you are. But for a lot of people, that type of meditation is too, the object is too diffuse. It's too subtle and too diffuse. And then they begin to have lots of thoughts and so forth. And so that means that form of meditation is still a ways off. And but eventually, for some people, it will be a possibility. There are other half steps to take in between, such as meditating on an object, a visual object, or meditating on a sound, or meditating on a visualized object, and so forth. So there's a lot of, between breath awareness and open awareness, there's a lot of steps in between. So I appreciate that observation.
Thank you.
Any other questions or things you're curious about? Okay. Yeah. The other thing is, I have to let you in on a little secret about how, because I've been teaching meditation now for about 20 years, and there are two words I never use. One is focus, and the other is concentrate. And there's a reason why I don't use those. And that is because human beings are great at following directions. And that's why I don't use those words, because human beings are so good at following directions that when you tell them to focus on something, their brows will knit together and they'll put a lot of effort into it. Or if you say concentrate, there's a lot of effort that goes into it. And so placing our attention on something is a lighter touch. And that's why I won't usually use those words, because that way we know that there's a slightly lighter touch to do. And I really appreciate the fact that when you talk about returning to the breath, you do it with this sense of gentleness and understanding. So it's like super. So thanks for that. Well, based on the time, I know that you came for the topic of the 4 immeasurables, and immeasurable love is the second of the 4 immeasurables. So I'll say a few things about it. As you've noticed, when you learn to meditate, you begin to have a sense of how thoughts impact your mind, how the things we think about day in and day out, how they change our feelings about ourselves and our feelings about everyone. And sometimes when we have a lot of negative thoughts, or we have worries or anxieties, we're not very happy. And when we are able to let go of those worries and anxieties when we're meditating, we have this moment of relief. We feel some relief in our heart for, wow, that worry is now lighter, or that thing that I was concerned about is now, I feel lighter about it. And there's that sense of relief. And when we see our own patterns like this, we see how just a subtle shift in our attention, letting go of a thought, one thought that worries us or one thought that concerns us, can release us from the suffering that was contained in that thought. And this lets us see how some, at least some, of the suffering we experience is embarrassingly unnecessary. I think that that's something that I noticed was a lot of the things I worry about never happen. And a lot of the things I'm anxious about never come to pass. And so when I hold on to those things, I'm causing myself suffering unnecessarily by holding on to these things. And it's a bit of a rude awakening for many of us to realize that some of our suffering is habitual and some of it's unnecessary. It was very embarrassing for me. But over time, we become a little more allowing and loving with ourselves. We are a little kinder toward ourselves and a little more understanding toward ourselves and a little less judgmental toward ourselves. And how this helps us with love and with the topic of love is that just as we cause some of our own suffering unnecessarily through our habits, others also cause a lot of suffering for themselves unnecessarily. And sometimes when we look at that with the eye of awareness, we can say, my friends in 12-step like to say that there, but for the grace of God, go I. In other words, that could have been me who is acting badly in public. That person who is saying negative things about others or who is causing a ruckus of some kind or other. That person could have been me. And so just as I would have compassion for myself if I were having a bad day, I could also have compassion for that person who's having a bad day. And so in this way, we begin to recognize ourselves and others and see how the things that make us suffer make others suffer too. And this leads to a little glimmer of something very valuable, which is empathy. We begin to feel empathy for other people and for what they're going through. And this actually can lead us to wishing for that person to be happy and wishing for that person to have what they need and not immediately jumping to judgment of another person, but realizing that that could have been us and having that sense of wishing for that person to be happy. And this, in the end, is the Buddhist definition of love, the wish for another to be happy. Yesterday, Lama Adam was reading about equanimity from the chapter on the four immeasurables that's in Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche's book, Excellent at the Beginning. That was the name of the book, Excellent at the Beginning. And the four immeasurables are immeasurable love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Immeasurable love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And as a result, when we begin to feel this empathy for others and begin to wish for them to be happy, that wish is actually coming from within us. It comes from within kind of our deepest heart. And what Khenpo Rinpoche says in his chapter is that love is something we feel naturally. We feel love naturally for those who have taken care of us. We feel love naturally for those who we feel are close to us or like us. And we wish for those people to be happy. But I remember one time Rinpoche said, our love is not really thoroughly pure right now. And he said, we may wish for others to be happy sometimes, But he said a lot of what we call love is actually a bit of a business transaction. He said it's if a person does nice things for us, then we'll love them. But if they don't do nice things for us, then we won't love them anymore. And in this way, he said, because some of our love is transactional, it's about a business transaction, then we're always secretly keeping a tally of what people have done for us and so forth, and what they owe to us and what we owe to them. He said, what we really want is not that kind of love. We want the kind of love in which the other person wishes for us to be happy and we wish for them to be happy, regardless of whether they do, say, and think the things we want them to do, say, and think. And so as a result, he said, we have to work on love a little bit, because right now it's not the way it could be. So what we have to do and how it begins, he says, is through equanimity, which is why Lama Adams spoke yesterday on equanimity. He said, when we realize that everyone is just like us and everyone just wants to be happy, and no matter what they're doing, even if they're doing things that make themselves and others miserable, they're only just trying to be happy. And so in that way, they are 100% just like us. And so he said, if we start from a place of understanding that all beings want the same thing, he said, it becomes easier for us to wish for the happiness of another person. If we see that they are just like us, and we can think about how we want happiness, and how sometimes when we do the wrong thing in order to get happiness, we are sometimes willing to cut ourselves some slack. Just as we can do that for ourselves, we could also do it for other people as well. And just as we wish for our own happiness, we can also wish for the happiness of others. And so he said, right now, we have to engage in what now I personally would call remedial wishing for the happiness of others, because right now we mostly wish for our own happiness and we're kind of not wishing always for the happiness of others. So we have to do a little remedial wishing for the happiness of others. And this is why the 4 immeasurables are frequently recited every day as a way of articulating that wish for ourselves so that we can hear ourselves say it. May all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. That's love. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. We'll learn about that tomorrow in the talk on compassion. May they have that great happiness, which is freedom from suffering. And we'll be discussing this on Sunday evening in the topic joy. And then lastly, may they come to dwell in great equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. And so even though equanimity is mentioned last, when Khenpo Rinpoche teaches about the 4 immeasurables, he frequently mentions equanimity first, because it's through that recognition that we all want the same thing, that we can give birth to empathy, and giving birth to empathy, we can then take it the next step, empathy the next step, and make the heartfelt wish, verbalizing it every day and thinking it as many times a day as we possibly can. May all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. The causes of happiness are selfless actions, thoughts, and words. The cause of suffering, selfish thoughts and actions and words. This goes all the way back to recognizing that when we hurt others, we actually hurt ourselves. And when we help others, we actually benefit ourselves. If we think about this, it's true. because whenever we have acted selfishly, it's almost like there's a tight grip. We feel a tight grip, a mental grip that hurts so much because we're being so self-centered. And yet, when we open that hand and give to another with unconditional caring, there's a lightness about us, a lightness of feeling. And this is, for us, it's not that we're trying to teach some kind of law or make some kind of rule. It's not like that. It's just how human beings are. When human beings are being angry, jealous, prideful, there's so much pain involved in that. And that's what they mean by may beings be free from suffering and its causes, which are all of these self-centered mental afflictions. And may they have love, which is all of these selfless thoughts, feelings, and actions. And so just knowing what causes happiness and what causes suffering in the laboratory of our own minds, feeling that in the laboratory of our own minds and our own lives, we can see how it's also true for others. And so this is, I guess you could say, it's where meditation is leading us. Meditation is wonderful, and mindfulness is wonderful, and the feeling of peace that we get from being able to let go of things is wonderful. But there's farther that we could go if we can begin to recognize how our moment-to-moment thoughts create our moment-to-moment experience of the world, and how changing those moment-to-moment thoughts allows us to change how we feel. And so this is going to be your homework for tomorrow. And that is to, when you wake up in the morning, think, may all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. And to think, may all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. Even if those are just the only two things you remember, it's a good start. May all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. And then watch how you are during the day and think, consciously think, and make this wish to be of benefit to others. What's interesting about this is that when you make this wish, at first it's going to feel a little bit artificial, a little bit fake. But sometimes when other people are suffering, it's all you can do is just wish for them to be free of it. Because sometimes when we're with others who are suffering, we don't know what to do. It's beyond our skill level. Some people are just beyond what we know. And if we can at least carry into our interaction with that person the wish for them to be happy, that wish is going to show in our sincerity. It's going to show in the tone of our voice. It's going to show even in our ineptitude at knowing what to do. That feeling of wishing for the benefit of another will carry across and be communicated. And that is a very powerful thing all by itself. So love, or loving kindness, as it's talked about in the Tibetan tradition, loving kindness is the wish for others to be happy, and maintaining that wish is a way to train our minds in love, even if it's artificial. As my friends in 12-step like to say, you fake it till you make it. And you bring about this kindness in your own mind, one thought at a time. Now, I have to make one note, and then we'll have another session of meditation. And that is, I saw this morning on social media that today is National Kindness Day. And I said to myself, wow, how cool is that? We're going to be talking about kindness tonight on World Kindness Day. So I'm really happy that a week or two ago, when I made up this list of topics, that accidentally it fell on the right day. And I also note that it is Friday the 13th. So I would like to draw a comparison with Friday the 13th and kindness. And the way I did that was by reading Twitter this morning. When I read my social media this morning, I saw a quote from none other than Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He's passed away many years ago, but his creations live on. In the land of make-believe that he created in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, there was a king, and the king was named King Friday the 13th. And he explained in the passage that I read today that the reason that he named the king Friday the 13th is because often parents make their children unexpectedly afraid of the number 13 and unexpectedly afraid of Friday the 13th, thinking that it's unlucky and bad. So Fred Rogers said, I gave the king this name so that Friday the 13th would have a happy connotation for the children. Because after all, every Friday the 13th is the king's birthday. And so it was the birthday of King Friday the 13th. And so he was teaching children kindness. He was teaching children kindness by, he was being kind to children by helping them not be afraid of Friday the 13th. So anyhow, I had to tell you that story. We're going to run over this evening only by about 5 minutes. I do apologize for that, but I wanted to make sure that anybody had questions or anything they wanted to discuss on this topic, that you had a few minutes to ask questions. You can either type them in chat or unmute your microphone and ask. Any questions about wishing for love and compassion? Wishing for the happiness of others? Okay, well, it seems that there are no questions, which is okay. It's actually fine. And I'm hoping that understanding ourselves through meditation will help us understand others, and being kind to ourselves will help us be kind to others. And so that's my hope. So we'll wrap up today then with one more short sitting. Again, placing the body in the posture of meditation, placing one's attention on the intention to be of benefit to others. You can begin by taking one deep breath, breathing out, and then allowing the breath to come and go naturally, placing your attention on the breath. Okay. Thanks so much for being here. It's I really appreciate all of you being here for the classes, and I invite you to come back tomorrow evening. And when Lama is going to be talking about compassion, and then Lama Tom will be talking on joy on Sunday evening, and then on Monday evening we'll close out the program with Lama Adam, Lama Tom, and myself addressing the topic of making lasting change. So I'm really happy that you've taken the 10-day meditation challenge, and I'm really happy that you're going to do a little bit of homework on wishing for the happiness of yourself and all beings. So I'll recite the 4 measurables again as like a dedication, thinking that we dedicate all of the goodness from this session to the benefit of all beings. May all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they have that great happiness, which is freedom from suffering. May they dwell in great equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. Okay, thank you. Great to see you all. This video will be on up on YouTube later tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Lama Kathy.
Hey, yeah, thank you. Yeah, be safe out there. All right. Okay.
I will.
Okay.
Good
Bye-bye,
night.
everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Yeah.